Hey, welcome to the Spark of Madness podcast. We have a very special episode today. I'm Matt. This is Ben. We can't show, I guess we can show Aaron. He's not going to be on this podcast. He's running the controls for us. But we have two special guests. This is the first, I think. Jake Hühn is back. He was on our Death Note. Jake was on our Death Note and a bunch of other podcasts. We did TV animation. He's our TV expert. And then Brandon Penticuff. What was the last one you were on, Brandon?
Game of Thrones.
This is the last one you were on?
Yep. This is the first time you've invited me back since.
That seems like a mistake on our part.
We disagreed on the quality of the last season. You said you won't have me back since.
So we brought you back for whatever.
Dracarys.
Westworld.
Yes.
So yeah, we're going to talk about Westworld. The 5th episode just came out.
The mid-season.
On Sunday. So we're exactly at the halfway point. Ben, you, Jake, and I did a preseason, I guess, podcast.
Yep. Predicting.
What do you, like, based on our conversation, what do you think, were we right? Were we wrong?
We were right a surprising amount. More than I expected even, actually. I know I had some softball ones that I was like, yeah, this will probably happen, and those were right, but honestly, I was surprised at the accuracy of some of your predictions, Matt. If you remember some of them, you want to take a bragging moment. Yeah, take a bragging.
Remind everyone what I was right on, because I don't remember.
He's like,
I'm usually wrong. This is a first.
I remember watching. You said there'd be robots.
There would be robots.
They did.
there'd be tumbleweeds.
Yep.
And
Okay, yes, because we were chatting in Facebook about this. So if you have notes, I do remember you had a surprising number of accurate predictions.
Well, I have notes, but they're almost illegible. Like, literally, this shouldn't be a surprise. I take notes from every episode. So what I remember us talking about was, there's almost two sides of the coin. There's a lot that I think, so tonight I think we'll talk about what's happened so far and where we also think the season's going to go. I think a lot of what Ben brought up is like leading into the second half of the season from our first pod. But what I remember was we talked a lot about a lot of the altered carbon DNA.
I called that.
Yeah. We talked a lot about that. We talked a lot about like kind of identity and the hosts and how they will kind of simulate. I guess it's the whole altered carbon idea of like how people could be immortal with this ability, both from the host perspective as well as other people, like them being a vessel for them.
Yep.
And that came true pretty early on. Yeah. Like,
although we got a twist with it with the second most recent episode, where we really got to see it happen and how it could go horribly wrong, which I did not expect. Let me just say, my prediction
successful, right?
Yeah. My prediction was yes, they're going to make an immortal guy, and he's going to be the villain, and he's going to be like this immortal god almost, right? Prediction. Now, the immortality, totally spot on. I knew they were going to go there with that. I did not expect them to show what a total actual hell it would be if it went wrong, because I didn't expect them to actually port consciousness over.
they literally made it a hell. They had him like Satan.
Yep.
He even said he was Satan, and there's fire burning around him.
Yep. Yeah, it was. You're right.
It was literal hell. Like, he was
literal,
the devil. Like, like there was no like subtlety to that reference.
I believe he even said
pretty straightforward.
Yeah, he quoted a line where he's like, "This is hell," basically.
Do you want to tempt the devil or something?
Tempt the devil.
You want to tempt the devil.
That was his loop.
Yeah. And at the end, like, he's burning and he has like horns. Like it's
So,
like, he's
Well,
the
and
devil.
the line about how they said there were two, one above and one below.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah,
And
but
it's not
the one
it's a
above was just the
reflection.
one below looking at a
I
reflection.
just thought of something with that scene.
Just now.
Just now. Maybe that's a symbolism of the metaphor for heaven and hell.
Okay.
Yeah, I think
Bad people
literally
will never go to heaven, never live forever.
Oh.
This in a dumb way.
Sure.
But they keep trying to make him live forever, but he's always going to burn in hell.
Right.
You mean because of his...
Or
because
take
of
it
his
more literally, he was saying there's no such thing as heaven.
Yeah,
that's
that
true.
too.
That's true. But because the deeds he's done in the past, because we
Right.
know he's an awful guy.
Right.
He's not a good person.
He's just an optimist that there is.
Well, but I'm saying like maybe that's a very
Sure.
like literal symbolism.
Anybody else get Event Horizon vibe?
I got a little.
Yeah,
Yes. Got a lot of Event Horizon from that.
So
You should see my event horizon.
So, poo. So
No, it's more like poo.
So Brandon, we can talk a little bit. We'll probably bring up some of this stuff we kind of talked about in the first episode going into the season. But like for somebody who wasn't part of that conversation, what are some of the things that have kind of stood out for you for the first 5 episodes based on what you remember from the first season?
The thing that probably jumped at me at first was, we had this very much sense of the different timelines and trying to figure out the puzzle that was the first season. And I feel like in the second season, they were more overt that they were playing with some of the time, yet it's still just as mysterious. And I have to give them a lot of kudos, I think, for that. It's right there in your face. You know that there's this timeline where Bernard wakes up on the beach, and you know the fact that you're getting the story of him and Charlotte after the gala dinner. And so it's very obvious, okay, there's 2 timelines, and yet you're still trying to piece together what's going on.
Get there?
Last time, you didn't know you were being told 2 timelines and they were tricking with you.
Yeah.
This time, it's almost like the magician's right in your face playing a trick. And I really...
Yeah, but I knew last time because of Jonathan Nolan and Christopher Nolan. That's like their staple.
thing.
Right.
Yeah.
It was a memento.
I agree, though. No, I didn't
Or
fall...
Prestige.
I didn't immediately catch the 2 timelines in the first season. You're right, though, that it's interesting that they hit you over the head with it in this season, almost as a dare, try to figure out what this is about.
There's a sense of bravado with it.
Yeah, and you still can't. And they did say in interviews, I wanted to bring this up, so I'm glad we're talking about this.
Good.
They said in interviews before the series even started, we were mad at how early some of the theories in season 1 got guessed, and we have written it such that we think it will be much more difficult, and there is misleading things, and even the directors and cast are going out into the worlds of Reddit and things like that and misleading people right now. So we know that's out there. I was going to say, coming into this episode of the podcast, I was a little disappointed that yes, there's some mystery out there, but it seemed very season 1 style mystery where it's like it's linear and leading to. I didn't feel tricked very much yet, which makes me think that if they succeed in the second half of the season, I will feel extra tricked, and that'll be cool.
I actually think they're setting us up for that because I think they're almost lulling us into a sense of like, man, we're really smart. We're onto this. We figured this out.
Yeah.
And a lot of that I think is being accomplished mostly through just like really interesting episodes.
Yeah, you're right.
It's almost like we're going to go down this path and give you more information about this one thing. Then we'll keep going down it in the next episode and maybe bring in a second thing and keep going. But there's still a bunch of unanswered questions that they've even set up in very first episode or second episode that haven't tied together yet. That I think once they do, still have the opportunity to be like a big surprise, just as big as season 1 potentially.
I feel like it's almost like a maturity in the story that they're telling. And to your point, in the first season, there was a lot of hubbub about the fact that they had to stop production after the first episode. There's a lot of content that was kept, but there are a lot that they rewrote and did a lot of rewrites, and there was delays. They were still trying to get their act together, where this season, it's like they came in with all cylinders firing. They knew exactly what they're doing. And to your point, each episode, I think, is more interesting in and of its own, where in the last season, the reveal had so much weight to it. This time, I think there will be a reveal and things that we're not catching, but I don't think it will be as important because it's still enjoyable as you go.
Yes.
So you think that this is more episodic in a way? These episodes, they're kind of
episodic,
self-contained.
The way you say that, it almost sounds like they don't necessarily interconnect as much, and I think they do.
They do, but I think not as drastically.
I guess the way I'd say, I don't necessarily disagree, but the way I would say is I think the episodes are more interesting in and of themselves, irrespective of what other tricks might be going on.
To me, I think it's like
seasoning.
Yeah, to me, I think it's less about the mystery. I think it's less about the mystery right now. There still is mystery that's kind of driving plot and driving things.
My favorite part.
Yeah, I think now though that we've kind of gotten through kind of what this show is. Like we've revealed more about what it is. They're expanding on like sci-fi themes, or they're expanding on some of these bigger ideas
that Star Trek did before anybody.
Sure,
like Star Trek did everything.
They're expanding on the world. They're giving us more information and also letting us attach to the characters a little bit more and seeing them go off outside of their loops and stuff, which is interesting.
Absolutely.
That is the show version of a comment board saying first.
Did it? Can we get a prediction counter for a second though? Because I'm totally calling my second prediction from the first one that came true, and that is that. Bing! Yeah, Bing. I definitely called that they would do like there would be mystery. You can't have Westworld without mystery. I'm not saying there wouldn't be. It would be a downplayed mystery. We'd get a lot more surface level action. We'd get a lot more. I mean, the Japanese episode, the Shogun World episode is, I think, case in point about that. And the fact that it slightly let me down. It was super entertaining. Not as artsy as I thought it would be.
It was a little rushed, wasn't it?
And it was a prediction that I made that HBO was now comfortable in Westworld, and they were like, we're going to give you a little bit of violence, a little bit of a lot of violence, and just that good old fashioned. It felt like a self-contained movie. They even had a moment, and I brought this up with Matt before the podcast, where the two sidekick characters, who are the goofy comic relief, are like, "What's the plan again? This is the plan. Oh, we're gonna die." And I'm like, that felt like a PG-13 movie right there. And so, again, super entertained by the episode. Don't want to debash it too much. I just feel like there was less nuance and less mystery.
Debash.
Kind of like I called.
I never heard that. Debash is an interesting word.
Yeah.
It goes with debarge.
Debarge.
Let's
Look at this debauchery.
so I'm curious what you guys think are kind of like your favorite moments or big, like, I would argue that episode is one of my two, I guess, is because I loved, one of the things I was really interested in was seeing and was confident in from a prediction standpoint was that we would get duplicates of the characters, that we would get those. And from my initial prediction, it's not, I
from
would
different worlds.
Hafting, yeah.
Hafting.
So my thought would be that
recycling.
Maeve would see another version of Maeve, but it, in a literal sense, like she would see a version like
played by the same actress
visually,
This is different.
But this is actually much smarter, and it's almost like, well, no shit.
Yeah.
Obviously, they would do it this way.
Yeah.
And to your point of revealing that, I loved that they took the same sequence.
Exactly. That's where I was
with
going.
The music.
Yeah. Yep. Paint it black.
But with the
exact
Asian
same
feel to
movement and like just redoing the whole thing.
I may have listened to that on loop in my car.
Oh, it was beautiful.
20 different times.
The music to this show, because is this the same composer to Game of Thrones?
Yeah. Phenomenal.
Well, so
in my opinion, he's the new John Williams.
Yeah.
I think he's himself.
Well, since TV is so much more important now than it was before, it actually has a chance to stand up with film. Of course, he could be the next John Williams.
I think TV is more interesting than film now.
It's starting to happen. That's a separate conversation.
That's another podcast.
Well,
Another podcast.
I wasn't invited to that podcast.
No, but I think TV,
He'll be the
especially with HBO,
counterpoint.
Game of Thrones, with Breaking Bad, that has overtaken storytelling to another extreme.
Yeah, well, and
thanks to serialization.
You can see it here, like with that scene itself. For one, they do a whole episode where they go to a different world. That's a mimicry of. It's like a mirror of the show we've already loved, but it's also. I'm sure it's like a Star Trek where you see the bizarro version of yourself in like an alternate universe. It's kind of like
called
that.
Mirror Mirror,
but it's
with a goatee.
I love that. Love what they're kind of simulating by like it's the same but kind of different versions of themselves. It's the same but and how Maeve and Akane like when they talk to each other.
It's like the difference between The Simpsons and Family Guy, right?
So listen carefully.
Same, but kind of different.
I'm not going to say very many negative things.
Okay,
but and I agree with the points that you're making. But here's a thought within the story itself. If you're someone who goes to Westworld a lot, and then you go to Shogun and you see the same stories,
it's more
and the
dangerous.
Same
Sure.
It is more dangerous, right? Mm-hmm. But if you're seeing the same stories and the same characters, is that going to hold your appeal? Mm-hmm. Again, we're the viewers; we don't have to worry about that. But within the framework of the show, would that actually make sense?
Right.
I think you would have to be like a Man in Black level expertise to have realized
unless they're playing Paint It Black over the loudspeakers during that. That would sell me.
I actually think, like in a realistic sense, that there would be people who just want to go to Westworld and people who just want to go to Shogun World and all the different worlds.
But we were given an explanation that Shogun World was set up this way for people that thought Westworld was too tame. It's a more violent version. There's reference to that.
But I also think that in generally, like you'd have to have a lot of money and you have to invest a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I don't think it would be that big of a deal of like.
Well, if you're going to the moon to visit one of these parks.
Can I just say, I love that they did reveal a third world like that. That
third world
is already.
That's something I know we didn't necessarily predict.
No.
Was that
Rajworld.
Rajworld we didn't know was coming.
No.
Nobody had an idea.
Which they introduced before Shogun World.
Yeah, which is pretty
Yeah.
cool.
Right,
They're we know you want Shogun.
That's one of the reasons why I think it made it a little bit more impactful. It's like where's Shogun World?
Where's Shogun World?
Like,
And then
you weren't even expecting this.
boom, we got a third.
And they introduced.
I was like, I don't care about this. I want Shogun World.
We know though from the marketing efforts before the show started, we know there are six worlds.
Yeah.
So we've got 3. So I wonder, are there theories out there about what the other 3 are?
Walt Disney World.
Here's a question:
World.
have we
Universal
actually seen another
Studios.
park?
I don't know if we've
Future
actually
World.
seen it. Right.
In the actual movie, the classic movie Westworld,
right, yeah.
the
Yeah,
sequel
we
is called
watched that.
Future
The
World,
sequel is Future World.
which you could say that the
Well,
scenes.
they in the classic movie they had
Roman and medieval.
which what's his name?
George
Martin
said
that he wanted to make a Game of Thrones world.
We talked about that
Yeah.
on our first.
But you think about it, they probably used the same sets that we talked about.
So I shared at least one of mine. I'm sure I have a couple more written down. I'm pretty confident both of them will come up. What are some other like kind of big things from the first 5 episodes that have kind of stood out as like maybe even a low point, but like a high point that or high or low that's kind of standing out like as you think about the show and going forward?
I have to say this one because it was the highest point of the show, and we've already talked a little bit about it, but I want to bring it up again. The demonic, just torturous episode where we find out that Delos is trying to be made immortal, but is trapped in a body, rejecting his brain.
So continue.
Yeah.
I want to ask you something. About
Please do, because I've got all kinds of thoughts on this. But I will just say, horror movie level, didn't expect it, but like effed with me psychologically.
Well, the filmmaking with the loops and the progression and the scene and how he's literally trapped in a circular room. It's very
the fact that he revealed that on the final one and left and said, "Don't shut it down yet," was just to me like, because if you were set in that state, it would break you. I mean,
that was him getting payback.
Yeah,
Well,
exactly.
And
Yeah.
who would have thought that when you saw the earlier scene where they incinerated it and killed it all with fire, that you'd later be thinking of that as being merciful?
Right. That was merciful. Right.
Within minutes, you're realizing that no, that was mercy.
So the science behind it, because I want to figure out the science. Like, is that really him or a consciousness spin-off of him?
Here's the difference.
Arnold. I don't know the science of it.
Arnold Bernard kind of thing is a spin-off.
Yeah.
And that's what I thought they were going to try to do for immortality.
Well, I think they still have it because he was carrying that consciousness.
A second.
Oh, you're jumping ahead.
And I'm thinking maybe that's going to be in.
We'll get to that later. Let's get to that one. But I think that's an interesting question, though, the difference in like literal translation of this is an exact replica of that consciousness that's just going on versus Bernard, who seems to be more of somebody who's developing off of Arnold into like an independent person.
Yeah. He's more of the image of him.
Yes, an image of
a clone.
Which
actually,
version?
what a clone would be.
Yes.
He's more of a clone than an actual.
Exactly.
My question is the science behind like. They glazed over because they didn't really tell you how they implement.
Well, theoretically, if you were able to digitize memory to where you could save it and you have essentially a save point like a video game.
Isn't there a movie about that though? Like
there's an anime about it.
I am confident there's lots of movies.
Steins Gate.
Isn't what's his name?
Remember that one
Jack
song
Sparrow
about love?
But Jack Sparrow was in it. Like he downloaded his consciousness into the computer, and now he's everything.
Did you just call him Jack Sparrow?
He's talking about. Now you got me thinking. All I can think is Jack Sparrow. Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp. There's a movie with.
Yes, I forget the name of the movie, but I have seen it.
Is that what they did? Like
Yes. So let me explain my understanding of it, just to clarify for the audience and everything. Bernard was programmed by Ford with what Ford knew about Arnold, right? So it's a translation of things, personality traits, and things like that. Still coded,
as far as we know.
Still coded, as far as we know. This could all change.
The memory of what he like a relationship.
But the point is, the consciousness was made the same way that a Westworld robot's consciousness was made, right? You program in. That's why he needs a cornerstone, right? And he needs all that stuff.
There's a narrative.
Yes, there's a narrative. So that's how he was made. It's a clone, like you said. It's a replication. It's a semi-immortality. They were going for true immortality, which is what Brandon was getting at, where you digitize the memories, plant the brain from one thing. And I think actually because they said the brain was being rejected, I think they planted the physical brain of the person into a host.
That is not my take.
What's your take,
The whole red ball thing,
Yeah.
I think they basically, with Delos, they've got a red ball that they've made of him. I think they've been iterating over it. I don't think he was mostly organic. I think he was host with it.
So
That's
he's not
my
a
take.
cyborg. He wasn't a cyborg.
By the way, the movie was Transcendence. I looked it up. It's a 2014 film with Johnny Depp.
Nice.
But even then, is that really him? Is that still not a? It's still like a memory.
the
of him?
thing
That gets back into what's the theory about the boat that changes parts over time?
Right. Yeah.
The
what
ship of
is-
Same boat that
Theseus.
you left with.
The ship of Theseus, or the
thank
port
you.
of Theseus.
That's
yeah.
true because like.
At what
these
point
are
does it
completely
stop
new
being
cells.
them? Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
If you get amnesia, are you really you anymore? You know, that
Yep.
type of thing.
I don't know.
So, Brandon, what's your big takeaway, I guess? Or what's the thing?
I don't know if this
that's-
qualifies as a takeaway, but something that I've been giving a lot of thought to lately, and we had talked separately, and I talked about how my prediction that went wrong. I think there's still an element of it's true about Elsie controlling Ghost Nation. We've, as they've revealed what's going on with Elsie, we've definitely been led to believe no, she's not controlling Ghost Nation. However, I still think there's an element to the Ghost Nation story where they're protecting humans, even though they've kind of ham-fisted. They've not shown them harming them. They've shown them kind of
Rounding them up.
and not necessarily being super.
Who's the
cushy
Ghost
with them.
Nation again?
Yeah.
Ghost Nation is basically the Native American, the tribes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Also, I think something.
That's interesting that they're not harming them. That's interesting.
Right.
point.
Yeah.
Well, and there's that one scene where they have Lee Sizemore and they're Maeve and Hector have Lee Sizemore, and they're making, and the Ghost Nation said, "You guys can pass, but we're keeping him."
Yep.
It's made to me ominous, but I think they're actually protecting him.
Yeah.
Well, there's a line. There's a line that I
Why
went,
is that? I
I
wonder.
went back and because I couldn't understand him.
Yeah.
He was a whisper.
Yeah.
He leaned into one of the Ghost Nation, the chief, I think.
Yeah.
Leaned into Stubbs, I think, and was
Talking about immortality and being forgotten.
And he went, and his line was, because I had to turn on subtitles, I had to do so many things to
Wow.
get the exact line because
to work for it.
I couldn't understand it. And he said, "You live only as long as the last person who remembers you."
Yeah.
And that's part of that played through that whole episode.
Yeah.
This was,
That's
I
a
think
good,
this was episode 4, maybe.
So there's-
Yeah.
And it was what was relayed to at the end of the episode. I think when it was Ed Harris, as he was talking to Delos, and he was like, "People remember you better. Like they remember you now better than you actually were." And
Yep.
like it's this theme that plays through, and so it's interesting
Which
that
is
it's
the Bernard-
built into the Ghost Nation characters. So go ahead.
But also with the Bernard character, like this is the better memory of he has as Bernard,
Yeah.
through his point of view, not really Bernard.
Right.
So they're playing with that theme.
Two more quick points. One, at least related to the Ghost Nation aspect. If you remember I think it was the very first episode of season 1, we had that scene where Ed Harris takes the Native American, I think he was a poker dealer. He ends up taking him up to the top of a mesa and ends up scalping him. And that's where he sees the maze and the thing. And it seemed very odd because the maze, other than being a reoccurring symbol in a couple episodes, it didn't really seem to have a lot of, I mean, it was the theme, the maze.
Right.
But it didn't, what was the literal reason why he needed to scalp him and see that? And I kind of chalked it up to, it was part of that, what I talked earlier about how production had been started and they rewrote a bunch of stuff, and it was like something that they left in for the scenics and they filmed it.
Box. Yeah, maybe.
But in this season, first episode, again, when they went to take the mind egg, the chestnut, out of that, they found that again, and they even make a comment, "What's this? I have no effing clue." So the fact that the showrunners and the writers specifically meant to bring it back, I think that's going to be tied into something. Either it's like they're older, there's a group of hosts that they're doing. I think it ties into the fact that the Ghost Nation are protecting humans. I think there's something, the non-hosts.
So the first season's called The Maze, right?
Yep.
Yeah, and this one's the door.
Yep.
So they're the key. They're the key.
That's a possibility. The other real quick thing in my mind is you made the comment about the quotes that the Man in Black William is saying to Delos there at the end. He also makes a comment about how the world's better off without you, and it's probably better off with me too, or there's something along that line.
Self-loathing.
And maybe I'm getting ahead of ourselves into predictions, but I think that probably plays into one of my predictions.
Okay.
So
all right, we'll get to that.
That's called a tease.
Ben, what's maybe we've already talked about, but like kind of what's maybe like a scene or something that really stood out to you from the...
I like the tiger.
Everyone likes the tiger.
Great.
They're great. No, I'm enjoying. I mean, I think your episode is my favorite episode. The one I like.
Yeah.
How did he get it?
Because you spoke first.
I spoke first. I'm sorry. First.
I listened to Paint It Black first because I'm older. So.
But I think overall, I think To be honest with you, everything I love about Bernard Arnold is my favorite timeline. I love everything with him. I think he's the most interesting plot to follow out of all of them.
Does that include if he's not Bernard or Arnold?
Well, yeah, if he's something else, right?
That's true.
And that's another thing that adds to the mystery and intrigue of his plot line, you know.
Anyways, he's a good actor.
He is the heart of the mystery in this show.
He's the main character, I think, in Westworld.
Arnold.
I would actually argue. I wrote this down. I think it's interesting because he's the character really fueling the timeline. The only remaining kind of timeline.
He's the one with all the clues too. The missing scar and
I think he's the audience. I think he represents the audience.
Well, I think it's interesting because I actually feel like while his scenes are like kind of they're interesting in like a theorizing standpoint and also from a like leading us towards more information. Like in a lot of ways, his scenes directly lead to information versus some of the others are more like this is character driven or this is related to more of like a higher concept idea. His stuff this season has felt very like this to this to this, and we get more information. At least that's how I've perceived it. And I think a lot of that also has to do with his Jeffrey Wright, he's the actor. Yeah. I feel like his performance this year with this season is very different than the first.
Yes.
I feel like it's maybe just his character in the situations, but I also have noticed like how he's behaved in certain scenes are different from a character standpoint than they were in the first.
What do you mean?
I wonder if that...
Like, what do you mean precisely?
Well, like, I guess... You
just can't say that, Matt. You got to explain.
Well, like his in a lot of ways, he's almost overly like glitchy in a lot of ways
and bewildered,
which is you can rationalize it.
Yeah, like he was shot in the head in the last episode of last season. That's one.
Yeah, I mean,
but also maybe
why is he doing that?
Maybe he's living like maybe he's past his narrative.
No, listen.
You know what I mean?
Sure, but there's that. There's also, but then he's also segueing into like, whoa, what is this world? And then in his flashbacks, he's very like kind of mechanical.
I like the flashbacks.
And then in others, he's normal Bernard or like the familiar Bernard that's very stoic. And I feel like that inconsistency or that, and then in as we saw in the last one, he's the one that goes and gets the red orb, and he's very malicious. Yeah. And I feel like this is all representing different time jumps that we haven't put together yet.
Right.
And it's all leading towards, it's kind of awkward right now, but it's leading towards something really big.
Right. But the malicious one we've seen before in the first season, though, when,
he had to kill. Well, he didn't kill.
Yeah.
He didn't, we found out.
He killed Teresa, though.
Oh, he did kill Teresa, yes.
To the wall.
Like the flashback to those are when that consciousness of him is triggered. So that,
there's rationally,
there's
it explains it. I'm just like calling it. Yeah.
Right.
I know.
It's inconsistent
I'm
now.
just making an observation.
I'm really surprised no one brought up. I'm making us talk about this before we move on because I can't allow it. The Man in Black scene where he just obliterates the Confederado guy and makes him eat the nitro.
Death has been
and
sitting
then
across the table.
He
and
represents death.
It.
Like, I mean, I think for one, this gets into this is my segue into predictions. I think this is like indicative of his character arc for the whole season. That he takes on this responsibility of death and finality when these characters are supposed to be immortal and all these themes of immortality, and he's literally like. No.
Yeah.
And then we get these flashbacks of his wife committing suicide. It's just such an amazing scene.
Yeah, and like this game was like the where the game is at is specifically meant for him, and I love the fact that
that he's actually a host.
Ford,
God, if that happens,
no.
Oh, you want to go there?
Maybe
we can go there.
Maybe,
all right, we'll go there.
Well, maybe immortality worked on him. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
maybe that's something that gets to talk about.
The story begins where you end and ends where you begin.
But I do like the fact that he. I do like the fact that Ford talks to him through children.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like
always
I love
through children.
So
always through children.
Cool.
Although they almost always have to be killed off because they're aging too quick.
Yes.
It's always the problem with children in shows.
That's true.
Well, I also think it's funny that we've kind of not glossed over, but I know we've been talking for almost a half hour, but like, I mean, we found out this season who his daughter is.
Yes.
We found out this season. We still don't know that much about her, but she's a new character. We've like Gus Fring, the actor, is in the season as like a really cool role.
Oh yeah,
just a one shot,
a monologue.
Monologues. That's like this cool Westworld ideas. And
if I could, real quick, it reminds me of Wayne's World when they brought was it Wayne's World 2? where they brought in the stand-in for that one monologue.
Yeah.
That was Charlton Heston.
Yes.
Yeah.
There you
Aaron
go.
was turning around to like
You had our back, right?
Trying to cash my points.
It's good stuff. No, I'm glad you brought that up. The Man in Black being death, and full out saying it in the coolest way ever.
Sitting across the table from you, didn't even know it.
Really makes sense to me.
And he goes just to, not to totally derail, but this is also him going against like what is most advantageous for him at that moment.
His program,
right? Exactly. Bernard's controlling him. Who knows?
No.
Whatever.
So you're right, and I do think the death though is keyed in. Somebody brought up how important it was that he said that he hated himself. Like maybe I deserve to be dead too. Yes, yeah, Brandon. So I think that's key in the sense that he has reached a point where he is beyond his selfish human desires, and he's fixing this problem because this problem needs to be fixed. You know. And that's his mission and driving purpose.
I think he just doesn't care. I think he's like,
if he didn't care, he'd leave the park.
Yeah. No, I think he cares.
I think he wants to die, but he's a host and he can't.
All right.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. Now I'm gonna bite. I'm gonna bite now. Explain.
So there's a lot of different little clues, right? And there's a couple of them on different threads that aren't related to this, where it's like this doesn't exist for no reason that don't have to do with this particular one.
Yeah.
But the comments like there where he's talking about with Delos the whole concept that you'd be better off, the world would be better off without you. He said the same about himself.
Okay, yeah.
He historically as a character has been very much against the aspects of the park about how none of this matters, that there is no finite responsibility to it. Yet obviously, supposedly as a human, he would be, frail and a mortal creature. But you then have other things in tie-ins where it's this big game that he's playing against Ford. Ford, obviously, or at least we're led to believe, is no longer. Your facial reactions.
I guess
bring it.
The thing that I'm like, the one thing I would bring up to challenge. I mean, who knows? It could happen. Is really just how many times he's like constantly bringing up how he wants stakes. And like wants like this, and maybe I guess
wants finality.
Who doesn't love stakes?
I guess maybe as a host, I guess it would be an amazingly interesting idea. So it probably will happen. Is that a host wanting to die? Is very interesting, and like that's pretty cool. So
but they talk about like other hosts talk about wanting to die too.
Yeah, but here's the thing though: they could shut themselves down. Because they die based on gunshots, just like everyone else does, sort of. They can just be brought back.
Yeah.
So suicide would work on him unless someone's there to bring him back immediately.
Right. So I don't know.
So your theory is dumb.
No,
I don't.
Unless he cares that it has to be he's
we'll see where we end up.
No, I think
there's other little clues that's like they can't exist for no reason. Like again, I recently rewatched the first episode, and there's a scene where. The head of security guy for Delos that's arrived. Was it Craig?
I don't know.
Something like that.
I've never known his name.
He's sitting there.
Craig is probably an appropriate
we'll go with Craig.
name.
We're going to call him Craig.
I don't like him.
He's
like
sitting there talking to Bernard, and he's talking about how something's less than ideal. And as he says the word ideal, Bernard says it as well. Right? They both say the word together, and he makes a slight reference to it, but then moves on and doesn't dwell on it.
Okay,
there are definitely some, and I'm not claiming that I'm the originator of these theories. So there are some theories out there though that they know that Bernard is not a human, is a host.
Oh, they know,
and that they're trying to get information out of him. Why they don't do the other route and plug him in and stuff is less clear.
But there's
also theories that he's being put through a loop. And that some of those different timelines we're seeing are maybe different iterations of the loop.
So, but what if they're hosts and they don't even know it?
But that's possible. There's also inconsistencies.
Because he knew what they're going to say.
If you look at the way, you remember when some of the Western themed characters are being shot and their bodies are falling, if you watch that scene carefully, there's some inconsistencies when the shot turns and you see the bodies that would maybe lead credence to you're actually seeing iterations of a loop of that. The fact that he says that person, the same word right as that person saying it live is kind of question. There's some questions as to what we're really seeing there.
They also, like, one thing we called out in the first episode was that I think is really I guess this isn't totally, this is more predictive than it is about this specific conversation, but like how much I liked the Greyhound story.
Yes.
And like how they build in these, like, they're really like kind of heavy handed, but I love stories like that where it's like, it's very indicative of where the plot could go. It's a character driven thing. And I feel like this season has a whole bunch of like the hosts rising up the host, like there's the whole Gus Fring. The reason I bring this up is because I looked at what the Gus Fring thing was all about, and it was all about the elephants being chained with the stake.
Oh,
and
great
how they're
analogy.
that was a great story.
That was a great story.
And then there's more about like the cow and the flies that in the last episode
like
from Dolores.
even
And
though
like
they
there's this,
weren't chained,
and there's this big like there's a lot
yeah.
of these themes about how it spreads. This is where I'm going. I'm
And
trying to
who's he
segue.
delivering that to? He's delivering that to William.
Right.
Yeah.
And so we have a lot of these, and then we get this idea that a third of them just are erased. Now in this last episode,
Yeah.
we have the lake and everybody in the water. So where do you guys think this is going when it comes to how it, like all these different stories, and then we now hear that 1/3 of all the hosts are just like wiped.
Yeah.
So like the explosion in the Mason destroying it. That theory.
Is that a theory? I don't
Yeah.
know. I don't know theories. I'm
Okay.
I'm so oblivious because I don't listen to I just watch the
know.
5 episodes.
I
and
don't
take-
listen to podcasts. I make them.
Hold on. Brandon, what is the theory of the
Yeah.
explosion?
One of the theories is that the whole idea of all the bodies that they've collected is that's part of Dolores's plan. If you remember in season 1, they referenced that each host has an explosive
Yeah.
in
Right,
case they try to go off.
because they tried to.
One of
Like
the
Star Wars.
one of the theories is that all those bodies are part of Dolores's plan, and there's even a reference made in this most recent episode where they're talking about how they're moving to get all the bodies back to the Mesa, and they'll be there soon. So the thought is that the whole thing's been set up so that they pool all the bodies together, and then
blow it.
I'm hit the mic, sorry.
Yeah.
That she explodes it in an attempt to blow
Some
that up.
people just aren't going to make it.
Damn.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yep,
some
she's
people
gotta
aren't meant for
burn
the Valley
someone.
Beyond, right?
Now you could say though,
And with
and-
the train and everything. Yeah.
The
Now,
train
here's
is a
the-
piece of it, and then this also gets into B equals T if you
Yeah.
want to go there.
yeah. Sorry, you make your thought. I
Okay.
do want to hear about that because
Yes.
I don't know what that is.
So I do think though Westworld has a thing where because there is a mystery that we are trying to solve, and there's going to be one that probably surprises all of us, I admit, but sometimes then we read into other scenes maybe, and I think the cow thing, the cow story is definitely, I've always seen it as a little surface level just towards Teddy. I think it's really just I'm doing this greater mission, right? This greater good for our robot people, and you are going to jeopardize it in your current form. So I need to burn you, aka just rebuild you, not blow you up.
That's really a good point, Jay. And that
Yeah.
actually ties in. I forgot to mention, I'm so glad you
Yeah,
brought that
yeah.
up. That ties in with the whole Mesa explosion theory because that fits the analogy of the whole thing was you got the sick cows together and then set them on fire.
Yeah.
That actually ties in that they're getting them together, and that's part
Well,
of
and
it.
Wasn't there a scene with Teddy like dead? Like we
in
saw
the
him?
water. Yeah.
Yes.
One of the
Water.
ones in the
There's a
water.
scene with Ted.
So maybe Teddy is like the catalyst.
We
there.
definitely see the Teddy's body, but then again, we've seen almost all their bodies dead
Yeah.
at one point,
Yeah.
right? So,
Well, I think that
that's one of the things about this whole idea of dead bodies and the fact you can bring them back. Death really is meaningless. So
Yeah.
there's some cases in the story where they try
Well, I
to make
think
it
it's-
meaningful and it doesn't
Yeah,
hit
it
as
doesn't
well
hit.
for me.
I think we've been given a lot of timeline stuff too to suggest that this plan failed.
Yes, yeah. The people, the Delos Corporation is there and
Yeah.
taking care of business.
And maybe that's where it's gonna just like pull the rug out from under us at the end.
Yeah.
But like
Which plan fails? Just to be clear.
Dolores'
plan, like this explosion.
That explosion is in the most recent timeline because that's Craig and them pulling the bodies from the
I would
water.
argue that the blue dress Dolores talking to Bernard is after, because the very first scene in the very first episode, he's referencing how you left me on the beach.
I would
and
argue
would come
that
after.
I would argue that that's Dolores talking to Teddy in Bernard's body.
All right. You better.
Well, I think this is where
you're gonna have to explain this
I,
because
I think this is where we hand it to the showrunners because they have, even though we know that there's different timelines, we don't know.
I have no idea.
It's all like
Sure,
muddled.
absolutely.
Yeah,
And that's the
it's very
it's a good
muddled.
reason of why,
they have us
you know,
in the
that,
palm
that
of
they have
their
exactly. They can go every which way.
All right, explain B
explain.
equals T. 'cause
First of
this
all,
is
B equals
direct-
T.
yeah.
first of all, I know nothing. Right? There's
Okay.
no knowledge here. I was the one that thought.
This
You
is
know
our idea.
nothing, John Snow.
Socrates knows nothing.
There you go. I thought Elsie was controlling Ghost Nation. Fully admit that was
Yep.
completely off.
Okay.
Yeah, exactly.
Oh,
so
boy.
the theory is that part of Dolores' plan, and I don't know, part of me wonders if all these things can be true, so it could be one of these things, but part of
Right.
Dolores' plan and part of the things that she's messing with Teddy on is that she ends up putting Teddy in Bernard's body. A lot of the things that I think support this theory the most are visual, so it's kind of hard to describe without showing you the scenes, but there's a lot of scenes where you see like confusion in Bernard. There's some scenes for next week where you see Teddy walking by Bernard and he looks
Matt,
at him like
Almost
really
like
odd.
his performance is being
Matt,
informed
talked
Bye.
about this.
Right.
Matt talked about this.
Also, in one of the scenes, I think in the beach scene where he wakes on the beach, if you look closely, he's actually wearing clothing very similar to Teddy's outfit. Also, doesn't have the scar that he has from the.
So she, as a last shepherd, put the personality and as a hidden personality in Bernard to sabotage possibly the
or to save him. Or, I don't.
That is and a lot of people that thought this theory was heavily supported earlier have started to lean towards the loop, whether or not he's on some type of loop.
Okay.
So there's a lot of competing people trying to figure these things out. I will say this, from my perspective, reading through the theories and people's ideas, I have not seen the solid hitting on it that I saw in season 1. Okay. Like the whole idea that the Man in Black was young William was like put out there right the second episode ended it, and everyone was like, "Oh my gosh!" And you couldn't unsee
it. Yeah, sure.
Let me say I have thoughts on that though, because I think it is interesting that we are delineating, to your point, between being able to switch a human consciousness into a host body. Now, what we noticed is you can bring Arnold back as Bernard because he is encoded. We talked about that difference. He's a coded person, not a memory stored into a host body via this red ball thing, right? It's not that. So hosts are immortal, not only in the sense that they have robot bodies that can't naturally die, they can be killed. They are immortal. They're all code. They can be easily transported from one body
and
to
what's
another.
the line that Ford says to William? Everything here is code. You know that better than anybody. Well, another thing in the William's actually a host.
Here's a thought I just had to piggyback on both your points.
Yeah.
What if the end game for Dolores is to make herself omnipresent, becoming a higher plane by putting her personality in every host, like all the hosts that she can put. She wipes them clean, and now she's this, this Ultron, kind of character.
Hive mind God.
I do think this. I think there's credence to the B equals T and all, like these other ideas. Especially, it's where I tend to default is if it's an interesting idea about artificial intelligence and stuff like that, they're probably going to get.
Yeah.
Are they going to touch
artificial
on it
intelligence
now?
causes cancer, I heard.
Oh.
But
you know what really causes cancer? Cancer.
Oh, yeah.
The thing about what we were just talking about,
California,
though, is that they're scaffolding us to it without us even knowing it.
Yeah.
Is that we have seen duplicate versions of the same characters in other bodies, and that it's almost not irrelevant,
it's not a stretch
but it's you can see that your personhood isn't the body.
Yep.
That's where they're leading us. Is that your physical form isn't necessarily who you are.
Yep.
From the very first episode about questioning the nature of your reality, right?
Ship of Theseus.
So that's where
I think you're
they can
absolutely
go
right.
that way, which is an interesting.
Which is why they call it a host.
Guys, one other quick thing, and just to throw in here, and I say this as a counter even to my own thoughts. I think season 1, it was very much about the reveal and the trick, and that was a big thing. I think season 2, I think there's probably a lot more little red herring things that they've put that don't plan on going anywhere.
They said that.
Rabbit hole.
Right? So I think a lot of these things where it's like, this couldn't exist for no reason, well, maybe not.
Yeah.
I didn't mean to step in.
No,
it's like Alice in Wonderland, baby.
I was going
to
say,
you're going deeper down the rabbit hole.
Well, this
rabbits.
is a great point. This is a great point for us to take a second and reflect again on how this show likes to bring philosophy into it constantly. And I have a line that I want to quote. I think Ship of Theseus is really big. Your parts your whole kind of a thing.
Anything theoretical and philosophical are going to be cool.
they really brought that into it, because your consciousness can be anybody in this if you're a coded consciousness. The other thing they brought into was they did a bit of philosophy of morality and ethics, in the sense that when Maeve questions, you program us to love things, and then you get mad or surprised when we do, right? And so, because he's trying to say, why are you going back for your daughter? And it's like, you literally made me this way.
Yeah.
And so I found that one of the more simple but awesome philosophical ideas they're tackling with this show, right? If we build AI as humans and give it a personality, where does the morality stop of harming that personality?
Yeah, what is love? Tried defining love and deciding what's.
So go ahead.
One little piece I'd throw in, and I should have done a better job of bringing notes with me so I could help with some of this. But like on the B equals T thing, there is a scene again in that first episode where there's flashes after that initial dialogue. Which, by the way, did you guys call out the fact that that was filmed differently? That initial scene with Dolores and Arnold or Bernard was in like letterbox.
It was different.
It was it was intentionally made to stand out.
That's why I think it's
yes.
Shot with IMAX.
After that, the transition into the other scene, you see like these little clips of Bernard in these different scenes. He's sitting on the train.
Yeah.
He's firing like a Gatling gun. All things that Teddy's done. Not Bernard. We haven't seen Bernard firing a Gatling gun.
Yeah.
Tell me where you see Bernard firing a Gatling gun, even in the future seasons.
At
But
Gatlinburg.
Teddy, we have seen on the train in the very first episode. We have seen on the Gatling gun firing at I don't think it was the Confederados.
Yeah.
The
It
Yankees.
was. It was
We
when
saw
he was with
him.
the
the
Man in
army.
Black.
It was the Union Army, right?
Yep.
So those literally, in my opinion, that's heavy evidence, at least to make you think that, because they literally showed clips of Bernard doing Teddy activities,
which they did originally in the first season with Wyatt and showing clips of Wyatt, and it's really Dolores as Wyatt.
Absolutely.
Exactly the
And what
same
and what is
film
what did they say
techniques.
Wyatt does? He makes you wear the bones and skin of your enemy. Well, guess what? Teddy might be wearing Bernard's bones and skin.
Who's wearing? What if this is Arnold because he picked Dolores special? We had the whole scene where he pulls her from when in the real world,
Yeah.
like
Right.
in the modern world, and he's
pulls
like,
her
she's
in.
not ready. She's
not-
not ready.
yeah, she's
what
my
if
special
Arnold,
pet.
first season is like Man in Black is falling in love with Dolores. What
Yeah.
if this is Arnold wanting to be close to Dolores forever?
Oh
like,
my-
what if this is the train of him being with her the whole time
Oh
and
my God.
writing his narrative so they're together?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's like,
So Teddy is Arnold?
And maybe
Well, yeah,
has
what if
been,
that's
and
it?
has been all along, maybe. And when you start going down these rabbit holes, we're going to go back to rabbits.
Yeah.
I think it makes the question of who could that other ball be that much more interesting, right? It doesn't have to be.
It doesn't have to be one of
Arnold
the
or-
two.
yeah.
Matt brought that up. Because it's Westworld, it's not two options. Because we were all like, is it Bernard or is it Arnold or is it Ford?
Yeah.
You know, and it doesn't have to
So,
be the two
I think Ford would be
options.
compelling, but I don't think Anthony
So,
Hopkins
I think it
is
might be
coming
Chevy.
back, so.
That's what
Yeah.
Chevy Chase?
that's what I know.
Toyota.
Toyota is the other ball.
So two things I'll call out real quick. One is that we haven't seen come back again is the idea that they did bring up very quickly
Okay.
the idea of a mesh network.
Yes.
And that's how they control the narratives, but it's
Yep.
also like everybody is connected.
Right.
And so if we think about Dolores and this idea of spreading and disease,
They planted a seed.
they
we haven't
planted
seen
it
yet.
that we haven't seen actually.
Not
The
until
mesh
y'all get
network-
to-
Which is a
not
philosophy,
until y'all
which
get
is
to the
philosophy
Mesa.
in life. Like how we're all
the
connected.
Yes.
social
Social
conscience.
Not until y'all get to the Mesa, Matt.
Yeah, right,
Hey
and
guys,
when it
hold on.
explodes.
Maeve,
I love saying the word Mesa.
Maeve is in the mesh network.
Maeve, you're right. Yeah, Maeve is probably
Maeve
there,
is
right? She can
transcended
control it.
because she can do it without verbal.
other
command.
thing
She's a whole mesh of mesh or smash.
The other thing we haven't gotten to yet from a and I want to hear your predictions. I kind of hinted at mine is the idea of DNA and them using DNA from the guests and how that's being worked in.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten that.
We haven't gotten any of
like
that.
a substantial like what are they using with the guests'
Right.
DNA?
Right.
Because that was played out early, but
Yeah.
it never really came back.
Yeah.
Like you're talking about theories like what if Dolores is actually the daughter of somebody, or they're kind of against people's will, maybe turning people into hosts. Is that what you're talking about? With
No,
the DNA? Or
during-
you just mean the blackmail and the information part?
No. They had a scene at the start when we got to see the like drone guys that they are
Collecting DNA
They're
of the
collecting
guests.
DNA of the
Right.
guests, but we haven't seen how that. Like, what does that mean? Like, what is
they-
the
Gotcha.
reason
Right.
for
I
that?
went a
right.
step too far.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Guys, data privacy. This is data
GDPR.
privacy. This is GDPR. Totally.
This is what the Europeans are trying to save us
it's
from.
true because they are collecting their
Like
DNA.
6 emails today.
They are collecting
We
their
sent a few.
DNA and their data for marketing purposes.
Well, so
You have
I
the right
think
to be
it's
forgotten.
interesting. Now, I think we're actually going to get this information. We'll have to at
Some
episode
point.
6.
Yeah.
I think so. Just because,
Really? In episode 6, it's when it has to come to be.
yeah. Otherwise, it's going to feel so rushed and forced that they
Yeah.
can't really play it out. I don't think especially with all these other threads.
Unless they're dropping things for future seasons. I
I
do think they plan.
I think it was very intentional that the reason I say it has to be 6 is because we're now an episode distanced away from the Delos story where
Which
it comes
has
to
to come
immortality and it's DNA related and it's a real person trying to be translated into a
Yeah.
host. So when it comes to DNA, I think this is ultimately I think my prediction is that they're trying to crowdsource how to accomplish this method to literally create a conscious person that is a 1-to-1 correlation.
Of the
And
other.
by just pulling people's DNA and plugging them into hosts
Yep.
and seeing how it plays out over and over and over for these
the experiment.
They just need to make a realistic Jiminy Cricket. then your conscious is
Peter
right there.
Is Peter Abernathy just a MacGuffin in your mind, or is there data? Is there relative data there that would be different or less valuable than what they would have got in that last lab where they had the red balls and everything, right? So they've made this big thing about how the data that's stored on Peter Abernathy's head is special. Yet we know that data lab, apparently, there's a lot of questions to who even knew that existed and all that data they could have just went there to get.
So, yeah, there is questions about what that data is, because in the first season, it seemed like it was just the IP of how to make the hosts and what their programs were.
And maybe that's still it, but I think it's odd that you have these labs where you literally can create hosts and you can't get what you need there.
Right. So I agree. I think the IP piece of it is in the first season, they really wanted us to believe it's just the data of the park, quote unquote, basically how to recreate the park. They wanted that data. And they were tricking us the whole first season. We know that now. We're smarter. We're a smarter audience now, hopefully. So yes, what is the additional data? Is it just the how to recreate the park, or is it more immortality stuff?
I think the difference. So for one, we haven't seen Dolores spaz out.
No,
once,
we have not.
Right?
Not once.
So she's special in some regard, and she's very closely related to Peter Abernathy, who is really the first one that we saw to spaz out, right?
Yes, yeah.
But to spaz out, I mean, other than Bernard, who shot himself,
he heard the key phrase first.
Peter Abernathy's the only one we've seen spaz out that wasn't wounded, right?
He saw a picture.
Sure. So I guess where I'm going with this is that Peter Abernathy is the key to unlocking host consciousness, which I think is the key to unlocking any consciousness.
I'll say this. I don't.
That's why I think it's tied to Ford, which is then the whole reason they know it, and so they need to get that information out.
So
I think you're right, but if I recall, Charlotte put data on Peter Abernathy, right?
I'm kind of confused.
So that was after.
It's still confusing.
One of the more interesting. I think they went away from it. One of the more interesting things I remember hearing about Peter Abernathy was the idea that he might have been one of the first ones they tried to put James Delos in, and that's why he freaked out seeing a picture. That's why he freaked out at that picture, because it was a picture of his daughter. That's what broke him.
That makes sense. Oh, that's a really good theory. Because guys, I don't know if you noticed, but like he looks a little bit like James Delos. I don't know, like he really does.
That's an amazing idea.
Yeah.
All right, I'm gone. Oh, this is it. That's why I'm here.
Yeah, I don't think it is.
No, I mean, I made that when they were first showing old James Delos. I was just kind of like, oh, is there some connection to Peter? Because like they're very similar people.
So I think, speaking of a real person, what do you think of the prediction that maybe, I don't know about Maeve, but Maeve's daughter or them are based off of memories of real people. Like it's real in some way. And so like she's never going to find her daughter.
That could be your tie into the DNA.
Right. Yeah. That's what I'm trying to like.
I'm helping you bring those loops together for those that weren't catching
that. Like she's gonna look for this daughter in this world, and it's just translated into another body that's like what? Who is this person? And it's all based on. It all comes back to like the red ball of memory.
Well, maybe it never existed. Like the
too. That's another. Yeah, it could have just been
like Bernard's
manufactured.
Kids. Like right. You know, they never like just she's chasing nothing.
Bernard's kid existed.
You could also go to that trope where she finds her,
but he can't. It was Arnold's kid.
You could also do the trope where she finds her daughter, but her daughter has a mom and is in a happy relationship. And she has to do the big.
What does she have to do? Yeah, because it's not her real daughter, and we know this. And I mean that plays into.
I just thought of something. What if her daughter is a special
snowflake
host that actually ages and grows? You know what I mean? It doesn't stay the same.
No,
like, what if she meets her daughter, meets her daughter, and then like, who is this? And it's her, but she grows. Like
she's unrecognizable. I've got a crazy freaking theory.
What?
All right, Man in Black. God.
Yeah.
All right.
Spoiler alert.
Maeve's daughter is
the Man in Black's daughter.
Man in Black's daughter.
Yeah.
And that the consciousness of the wife. Of Man in Black's suicidal wife is put into Maeve, who has a memory of a daughter who gets killed, and it's all a narrative that is literally Man in Black feeling responsible for killing his wife, and she feels responsible. So it's all like symbolic of like what happened in real life, even though they don't look the same.
So the Man in Black didn't really kill his daughter. That was
my god.
When you edit this later, you need to do his head exploding.
Okay, all right, I will. Can we get Aaron get a shot of so I can like.
Screenshot. Ready?
All right, that's my prediction. I erase everything that just happened before,
and
all the
just-
wrong stuff. We'll just go with that.
Right,
That's my
this-
real prediction.
All my
That's a-
chips on red.
Honestly,
What's the tiger's her daughter?
Well, guys-
oh no.
let me sit on this for a second. Because the reason it's blowing my mind, I have had in the back of my head, like, why is it important that it was the man in black that she's remembering as having murdered her, right? Like, that has just been irking at me, that it's like she has these flashbacks. Is she going to meet him and try and kill him?
Well,
or?
and we also haven't had. There was very
There's
much
gonna be reveal with that.
There was
Yeah.
very much end of season 1 this mystery if she was still being controlled. It was. She supposedly made a conscious choice, but there was like little things in her programming that was like, oh, obviously she was
They
going to
never
go do
crossed
that.
paths
Right.
in the first season.
They
so
do
there's
not.
There's still a lot of like unknown
flashback
that we haven't touched on yet.
Yeah.
Which again is one where it's like they've kind of like
Also-
prioritized stuff that we've forgotten it.
Also, Ghost Nation's a big part of that scene.
Right.
Yes.
What if
Yes.
they were what if they were protective of humans even back then?
Yeah.
Wow.
What if what
It's all
does that
built
mean,
in.
right?
And-
Yeah.
and-
I like
sure.
that nurturing like aspect of
Ghost Nation.
making a host to protect.
Well,
others.
and I think what's interesting is like Maeve is on this path, Dolores is on this other to kind of spread consciousness.
Ding, that was
Man
something
in
I
Black.
called.
Another thing we haven't gotten to yet is that Man in Black is there's competitors to get to the end of this game and
Yeah.
like where it's going, and if there's a weapon, whatever that means.
Maybe the Man in Black and Arnold and stuff are like the missing link between all this. Maybe it's going to all come together.
Yeah.
To create this.
Yeah.
I guess
thread
what-
between AI and consciousness.
What
and
I'm
all
seeing
that
is though
jazz.
that everybody else has a very specific goal that is. The Man in Black has a very unique goal in that it seems like he wants to destroy everything. He symbolizes death and finality, and like that seems to.
He's the Joker.
This is me justifying
He
my
wants to
Maeve
watch the
theory.
world
It
burn.
comes back to like him feeling like we need to end this.
Yeah.
I can't keep. We
This
can't
was too
keep
much.
trying to just funnel people and make them live forever. Like
Yeah.
it doesn't work.
Yeah.
And so I think that's where this is ending.
He's
Yeah.
destruction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's nihilism.
and that's why you get the idea of him that cool scene in season 1
Right.
of him versus
personification. of death.
personification.
him and Robert in that scene, and they're
Yes.
kind of like very obviously at conflict.
Yep.
And he's like, Robert
Wants to give
anyway.
Robert
yeah,
wants
sorry.
to give life to this world.
Right.
Wants to make them conscious and real. And you have on the opposite end of that Man in Black sitting there saying, "End it, destroy it."
The puppet wants to stop being the puppet.
Yes,
From the puppet master.
yeah.
He's an anarchist.
And the puppet master is basically saying, "No, you still got to."
You can't leave from you can't get rid of the Men in Black as a host theory. You can't.
when it stops fitting.
Yeah, right, all right.
When he starts wearing white again.
Can I just say though, one ding up prediction for me? I did say that it was obvious at the end of the first season that they were going to make it such that Maeve and Dolores were these parallel storylines.
Right, yeah.
Where and I think that this was intentional from the showrunners, that they wanted to show hosts have a personal like life with self-interest, and they also have a awakening. Right, and Dolores is the awakening. What does it mean for us to be robots in a people's world, right? And then Maeve is the
Story of my life.
You gave me love and emotions, and I'm just pursuing my self-interest, right? And so I was like, they have to deal with both elements of giving someone consciousness, and you have it in Dolores and Maeve. And so I just was like, parallel storylines. Action movies do it all the time. You've got the action hero doing his mission, right? And then you've got the soldiers and the battling in a big field. And there's two storylines parallel, basically. So, ding.
What Ben, did you have any like kind of thoughts of where the season's going to go? You were very like coy in the first, like after your big predictions about the door and kind of other Alice in Wonderland themes, so where you didn't want to give.
I don't even remember my predictions at all.
We did go. Delos, that
were they?
lab where Delos was being held was behind a pretty ominous specific door there in
That is a very
fourth
good
episode.
point.
Well, my prediction that the tiger is going to have a big role.
No, I don't.
No.
No.
I don't know. I'm not.
Yeah.
I'm actually more just.
Along for the ride.
This season I'm just sponging it up, man.
Yeah, it's fair.
Just enjoying the lazy river.
I think your Alice in Wonderland stuff still kind of holds up a little bit, like these allegories and the fact that
Well, we talked about
Yeah.
it. It's a philosophical. I think every character, and you were keen in on that. represent something. They represent some kind of philosophy. You know what I mean? Some kind of meaning.
Yeah.
You know, like we were saying, well, maybe the Man in Black represents nihilism, anarchism.
Yeah.
You know,
Ford is life and creation.
Ford is life creation.
Wisdom.
Maybe Maeve is optimism. You know,
Do you ever see so much splendor?
No, Dolores
Splenda is better than our other.
Dolores is warped.
It's like a twisted.
Dolores is warped though, and Dolores is actually a archetype that has been used in other shows. It is the pure good to the extent of how pure good Thanos.
She's shifting to pure evil. Though,
Yeah, right.
She's becoming the villain.
I
right?
don't think so. So
She might be socialism.
So yes.
Like seriously,
No. Here's what I'm
the
saying.
greater
though.
good. You know,
Thanos from
They
the
can
Marvel
bring him back to
series.
life. That is pretty good.
well,
medical.
I actually-
the
I
need,
haven't
the needs
seen
of the
it.
many outweigh the needs of the few.
Yes.
Like that's a socialistic.
It's utilitarianism.
yeah,
actually.
but it's a construct of an ideology.
Yeah, well, utilitarianism is exactly what you're saying. Whatever causes the most good for the most people is the right thing, is utilitarianism. But my point is, taken to its extreme conclusion, it becomes bad. I have not seen the newest Avengers movie, but I know Thanos is trying to basically kill everybody for what he sees as a good reason, like a greater good of the universe.
Right.
And I think Dolores is very much... It is a classic archetype of a show to take someone who is so purely good that they are corrupted by that good, almost in the sense that they are thinking, how can I save the most people at the expense
My
of...
understanding
Like in
of the
Les
original
Mis is
comic
Javert.
stories was actually more interesting, where he was trying to impress the goddess Death.
Yeah, that's way more
That
interesting.
actually-
I really enjoyed that more, but
I don't know. I actually think this is a more interesting version of like the Thanos characters. That's
trying to
more
save the...
Really?
It makes it's
heat
more
death
it's
of
more
the universe.
intriguing. It's
Maybe
more
I
intriguing
just dig.
business.
Maybe I just dig the idea of the personification of death,
I know,
having an
okay.
actually.
Yeah, but
And being a woman,
but
Yeah.
love
to
it.
his point, I think it's an interesting thing. To be
archetype.
honest, though, I actually think I don't like her storyline that much because it's the same.
It is-
It's the
Dolores?
same.
Yeah.
It's the same thing. Okay, here we go.
It's definitely not been. I've not found it as interesting.
No,
as-
it's not.
It's one note, one or two notes.
It's,
yeah.
it's
Right.
yeah, you're right. It's 1, 2 notes. Okay, here we go. Go back to Bernard, see what he's doing. But
Right.
but it's needed. But like I think they're giving too much screen time.
Yeah.
To her because we already know. Until you do something differently, I want
Yeah.
because we know she's bad. You
Yeah.
know, she's on this mission. We got it.
Yeah. All right.
Anything else, guys?
I feel good.
I've got one last thing.
One
I'm
last thing
curious.
from
I'm just
Matt.
really curious. It's a really
Yeah.
small little
Okay.
detail
Okay.
I noticed. I'm
Uh-oh. This
curious.
is gonna blow it up.
Okay.
Another half hour right here.
Put that down.
During the retirement party for Jim Delos
Yeah.
in the real world,
Yep.
when she's playing the piano and
Yep.
they have a little scene there, Jim goes, anything but fucking Chopin.
Yes.
Chopin. This comes. There was in season 1. This is
Chopin
such-
World.
Yep, you got there before I did. That was
Chopin
it.
World. Okay, in season 1.
Sorry.
There's a little scene about how Robert is like they became music. They're so legendary that they become music,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And maybe this is just like an interesting little parallel. But Ford was like Chopin and Mozart. They became what you think of when it comes to music.
Yeah.
And then you have this little throwaway line. Like you could have said anything there,
yeah.
and they specifically chose to say anything but Chopin.
Yeah.
And that to me is like, I don't know that.
Yeah.
Like I don't think where I'm going with this is,
Yeah.
what do you think about Ford coming back beyond just like little voices in people's heads? I know they showed like a maggoty head Ford lying on the ground, but
I think the
What do you
character,
guys think?
I think the character Ford is very compelling, and I would like for them to bring that character back. The meta part of it is, though, is I don't think Anthony Hopkins is signing up for another season. So
No.
I think Ford coming back, it would, to your point, it would almost have
Different
to be.
countries.
It will be altered carbon
Or a different
style.
body, at least.
Exactly. So in that sense, Altered Carbon, the main character was 2 actors and 2
Yeah,
people,
sure.
right? And so I think
was he Gus Fring?
Yeah, I think they could bring Ford back as Gus Fring, right? As and the Mesh Network. If Ford is just in the Mesh Network, he can populate anybody at any time. You get this kind of matrix.
He's music.
Right.
He's
Yeah,
the host.
right.
He's the system.
I could even see like an Agent Smith type. Matt,
Make a point.
The Matrix, Agent Smith. I know
Right,
the
yeah.
later movies were not as, but the first one is still
Yeah.
good. Let's just be real.
Ian McShane.
Agent Smith being able to just become.
Is he in the season? So you can be in the season?
No, I'm saying that would be a good Ford to play.
If you said Ian McShane has signed on and he hasn't come in yet, I was like, oh, well, come on.
No.
You know he's back.
You buried the lead.
I would not have been able to hold that guy in the first 10 minutes.
That's a great
Okay.
point about Agent Smith, though. I think that is, I mean, he
Pop up into any character because he's part of the
kinda
Mesh
is,
Network. Yeah.
With the like little children
I was about to
characters.
say, because those children characters, there's two ways people could look at it, and I've seen some people just assuming, oh, they were pre-programmed, so they're just carrying on messages. But I'm sitting here like, no, I think Ford's
He's
like
watching.
popping into them.
He's watching.
We do know that this future or whatever time period they're in is bizarre, right? Because
Yeah.
they don't have night vision goggles for their
Yep.
military.
Yep.
They don't have helicopters.
Yep.
They don't have ways of transportation other than open dune buggies and military tactics
Yeah.
other than walking up straight to
Yep.
it. So
You're right. It's like that's probably one of the.
I feel like
cons
what
of
we saw in that one episode. You just take 3 Navy SEAls of our
Yeah,
modern
and they
day and they
could've
take
killed
out the entire camp.
Yep.
yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. That's a good point. That's
They had P90s, but that was about it.
They reimagined some like future drugs for Logan to take. R.I.P.
There you go.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Matt, that the notes you took for that music theory was very impactful.
Get it?
Is that a joke?
Notes, music.
Impact.
The joke's over.
Oh, notes.
You did
like
stop
musical
recording
notes.
5 minutes ago, right?
Yeah, that was. We need crickets edited into that.
Cut that out, will ya?
Busted.
Aaron's got that on the keyboard.
He does. I was. Yeah.
All right.
They all can't be winners.
I
That's
feel
true.
like this was
You
a
gotta
good.
fail.
Yeah,
Learn
this is
and-
good.
What did you learn, Bruce?
So
Why do we fall?
I think we'll try and get back together at the end of the season just
Yep.
to see, we'll
How
have
it
how
panned
many
out.
our prediction
Ding again.
counter
Predictions,
goes.
Counters. Yep.
But I don't know. I think my biggest takeaway, it sounds like you guys agree, is that it's just as enthralling as the first season.
Oh, for sure.
I agree,
yeah,
yes.
which is the win.
If
Yeah,
anything,
that's
it's
the
more
win.
interesting because, like I said, when I heard the whole Man in Black is older version of young William, I couldn't see it,
even-
and it was obvious that there was a lot of suspense being built into that reveal
Yeah.
that was empty for me. I still enjoyed the first season.
Jon Snow's
This
not
season,
dead.
though,
Jon Snow's
I
not
feel
dead.
like the map and the possibilities go in so many different directions that you can't keep track of all of them, and I'm definitely enjoying
Again,
it.
and let me just finish on this note. The writer said in interviews before the season even aired that they were very upset things were guessed so early in the first
Well-
season, and they have written it so that they will not be guessed.
We didn't. One thing we didn't talk about, and I don't think you guys talked about in the first episode, was the whole Rickroll that they did before the season announced, where they announced. Did you hear about how?
I don't listen and follow
Okay.
anything.
Okay.
So,
So a big thing on. Whoops, sorry. hit the mic
you
again.
want people to
a big
follow
thing.
us, eh?
A big thing on Reddit was they announced the showrunners, Lisa Joy and Nolan. I can't remember his first name.
Jonathan
Nolan.
Nolan,
Said that because everyone figured out the first season so much, you were talking about this earlier, they're going to just release all the information up front. We're going to put all the information out there. There's going to be a video. If this, and they put it on Reddit, and instead if it gets so many upvotes, like 10, it was a low number.
Yeah.
If it gets 10,000 upvotes, they're going to release a video and just tells all the story.
Yep.
They feel like there's a lot of people that watch Game of Thrones and know what's going to happen, and they do a good job of keeping the secret. They feel like the fans will do the same thing. So they made a whole big thing of it. There was a lot of people, like Vanity Fair, the person that covers the show, a lot of people
yeah.
bought into it and thought it was real.
Yep, we're gonna
They
get it
released
all.
a video. It went. It started off showing Bernard on the beach, and it started to give you a little. This is before the first episode. Started to give you little tips. It then shifted over, and it was the actress that plays Dolores. I'm forgetting her name right now.
Evan Rachel Wood.
Evan Rachel Wood, and the actress that plays Clementine was on the piano, and they were singing the Rickroll song.
oh my God,
It was.
that is perfect.
It was
Yeah,
perfect.
perfect.
and it was
It just
kind of
shows
funny to
they're
see some
messing
of the
with
people
us.
that got upset that like bought into it and thought and wrote articles talking about how it was
Yep.
a new way of handling show rumors and all this.
Yeah.
amazing.
So you're talking about spoilers,
messing
and they're
with
being, they specifically did that right up.
And
the
here's the
front.
thing. Maybe they
But
did.
they showed that they both played piano.
They might have written it so that there are hints, so that it is guessable. Because I agree, it's kind of cheap to write it so it's not guessable at all. But I think the hints are
Yeah,
more
otherwise you're
subtle.
just getting jerked around.
Right,
You
exactly.
You have to put up.
So the hints are in there, sure, but I just
Lost.
they're confident we're not guessing them because they've written them in such a way.
And there's enough mystery and enough other things to kind of get interested in.
Yes.
That you're always
on board. All right, end of the
All right,
end of the podcast.
I'm really excited now. I feel like it's we're recording this on a Thursday. We have three.
Let's watch the sneak peek for next episode already.
Yes.
Yeah, let's do that right now.
You'll see B equals
All
T.
right.
All right.
All right. Thanks everybody.
Thank you guys.
Bye.